So the community rallied behind us, and I'll never be more thankful to a community than what Clifton was to me. I love that community. It was unbelievable.
Hey coaches, did you know we're now offering shows for all sports? That's right, whether it's basketball, volleyball, softball, baseball, football, soccer, you name it, we've got you covered. If you're looking for a way to showcase your program, promote your players, and highlight the amazing things happening with your team, our coaches shows are the perfect solution. Plus, our business model lets you or your booster club raise money while building excitement and support for your program. Don't miss the opportunity to take your team's story to the next level. Find out how you can get your very own coaches show. Reach out to Chris at 713-269-4620 today. That's 713-269-4620 because every team deserves the spotlight. Welcome to the Texas High School Football Coaches Show on Lonestar Gridiron. I'm Chris Doelle, and it's my belief that the men that make up the fraternity of Texas high school football coaches are much more than a bunch of thick-necked guys with whistles. They do so much more than teach technique and the X's and O's of football. They take young boys and change them into young men of character. They get kids to believe in themselves, to trust others, and to put others ahead of themselves. Texas high school football coaches are unique in how they impact the lives of these athletes as well as the generations those kids touch. In this show, I sit down with a different Texas high school football coach each time and learn about them. Not their record, not their on-field accomplishments, but who they are and what they believe and what it means to be part of the greatest sport in the greatest state. All right, everybody join me and welcome to Coach Mark Bell to the show. Coach, how are you today?
I'm a blessed individual, very blessed, very blessed.
I love that. Well, I've got so much I want to ask you, but I always like to start off with, where did you grow up? Tell me about childhood.
Well, I grew up in Killeen, Texas, and a great place there. Gene Rogers was the head coach and athletic director there for many, many years and did a great job there. He's kind of a legend there, and brought a great program to Killeen, Texas, and started putting it all together. And, I was at Killeen when there was just one school, and it was the Killeen Kangaroos, and everything was great, and just had a lot of great coaches influence my life, and this kind of made me always want to be a football coach, and so I was very blessed.
Nice. And was it always football with you? I mean, I understand, in small town Texas, which Killeen was at the time, we played every sport. So talk about that.
Well, I ended up being a college tennis player, believe it or not. That was kind of my go-to sport. And back then, believe it or not great athletes, I'm not going to say I was a great athlete, but not real good athletes played tennis, and I became a pretty good tennis player and went on to play college tennis on scholarship. But my first love was always football, and that's kind of what I wanted to do and what I wanted to coach and what I wanted to be a part of. So just very blessed to have that opportunity.
I love that. So when you got to high school, you played tennis, and did you play football too?
Right, I played a little bit, not too much of it because I wasn't very big. I was a real small guy, but just a little. So I wouldn't say I played very much at all. But I was very blessed, and it was a great opportunity there. And like I said, found out that tennis was kind of going to be my sport, so I kind of chose that and kind of went that direction, and that's what I wanted to do.
Nice. And you said you got a scholarship. Where did you go to college?
I went to Central Texas Junior College back then, and my freshman year we won the National College Junior College Championship. So it was a good program, good team. So really good opportunity. And that's when actually the truth is when I transferred to A&M, and Coach Kenton wanted me to play there, but I really didn't want to play anymore. It's kind of burnt out a little bit, and so ended up going back once I graduated. Ended up going back to Killeen High School for my first job under Rex Turner, and I told Coach Turner when I applied for the job. He basically didn't have any openings type deal when I was talking with him, and he said, I got a head tennis job. I said, well, I'll take that, but the first football job that comes along, I want to have a shot at it. And then Coach Turner left. Coach Ricky Ray took over the command, and he when he had an opening that very year, and offered me a ninth grade football job, and that started my career.
Nice. And when did you know, as a kid, when did you know you wanted to do coaching?
Probably when I was about 6 or 7 years old, because I always just loved sports. Ball was always what I wanted to do, and I was just always really, really small. And and then all of a sudden, I get to 11th grade and I start growing, but it's kind of late then,
Yeah.
Because I was so small. But I was always the smallest kid on the team, basically, and everything I did back then. People said, I can't believe you got so big. But I said, I don't know what happened, but I just developed late and that kind of thing. So it's all good.
No, I feel you. I was 135 dripping wet in high school, and then went up to 180 the year after high school.
Well, actually, when I weighed in for my 10th grade physical, I weighed 102 pounds. So that ought to tell you something. So
nice. So you got the job, tennis. How did you do as a tennis coach?
Well, we did pretty well. We were very successful there. Started a good program, had some nice players, and back then tennis was a lot different. And part of my reason for getting out of coaching tennis was back in that day, you actually couldn't coach. Once the match started, you weren't allowed to coach. You just sit there and watch, and you sit there and you work with a kid all week, and all of a sudden you start seeing him fall apart. There's nothing you could really tell him. You can only talk to a kid when they split sets, and then you could talk to them between the split sets. But then they came in about 5 or 6 years later after I quit coaching tennis, and it allows you to coach kids during what's called changeover when they're switching sides of the court. You can kind of talk to them, but there wasn't much coaching going on during the match, and I didn't like that very much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about the transition to your first football position, how that opened up, and what you learned, as a real first-time football coach.
Well, basically how it all came about was Coach Ricky Ray, who is a very strong mentor of mine, and he was the head coach there, with the defensive coordinator there. And so basically every day during my conference period, believe it or not, I would go and visit with Coach Ray. I mean, every day, and we would talk football and everything like that. And he was applying for a head job, and at that time he was going to take me with him to go to the new job that he was, applying for, because he thought he was going to get it. In the last minute, Coach Turner ended up resigning, and then Coach Ray assumed the head position there at Clean High School, and he immediately offered me a ninth grade position there on his staff, and that's kind of how it all got started.
And what were you coaching there in the ninth grade?
Well, I believe it or not, I was a defensive coordinator for you in the ninth grade. You know what I'm saying? We had two different ninth grade teams at Clean High School at that time, and I was the defensive coordinator for one of the ninth grade teams, even though I was more of an offensive type guy. You know what I'm saying? But I learned a lot of defense from Coach Ray, and so that's kind of where I started out, and that's what I did.
Nice. And at this point, were you still a single guy? Were you, where were you in terms of relationships?
Well, and just about that first year I got into football, to be honest with you, that's about the year that I got married, and so started, married my wife, Becky, and started, off our marriage and everything like that. And then a couple of years later, we ended up having our first son, Sean, who ended up being a nice football player, and he ended up going to Baylor University, where he started there, I think 27 games, and
wow.
had a really good career there. And now he's the quarterback coach at the University of Houston. So Coach Ray, I always tell him all the time that he didn't know what he started, because I think Coach, he gave me the opportunity to coach football, and both of my sons are football coaches, and both of them coach at the University of Houston. Sean is the quarterback coach, and Brian is the wide receiver analyst. So both of them coach college football, and they have done that for the last 3 years. But Sean's been doing it for like 7 years, and Brian's been doing it for 3.
Nice. And when you got married, did your wife understand what it meant to be a coach's wife?
I think she did a little bit, but she's really learned how to do it, because it was a tough time. I got to give her a lot of kudos, because in the stands, it's a tough life sometimes for a coach, but it's also a tough time for the quarterback. Both her boys were quarterbacks, and so I'm the head coach, and both her boys are quarterbacks. So I'm sure it was a tough life sitting in the bleachers sometimes, when things weren't going as well as what we had hoped they'd go. But they were most times going pretty well. But like I said, that's a tough gig to be the quarterback's mama and the head coach's wife at the same time.
Yeah, and again, sitting in the stands, I'm sure near a lot of other experts who are double guessing everything.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Nice. So talk to me about let's go position by position as a coach from this first defensive coordinator gig.
Okay, well, basically, like I said, I was a defensive coordinator, for the ninth grade team, and ended up moving up the ladder a little bit there, working with the sub-varsities. On Friday nights, I was kind of in the press box with the varsity, on the headsets with Coach Bill Bain, who was a wide receiver coach, and kind of doing some visiting there, basically on every Friday night. And then talked to Coach Ray and had an opportunity to kind of move away from Killeen, Texas, and I didn't want to leave, but I talked to him, and he advised me, I said, if you want to advance in this career, you're probably going to have to make a couple of moves. And so I ended up going to Clifton, Texas, being the offensive coordinator there. And I became, like I said, I was the offensive coordinator, later in my couple years at Killeen on the sub-varsity teams, but then had the opportunity, like I said, to go to Clifton High School as the offensive coordinator there, where I stayed there as the offensive coordinator for 3 years.
Nice. And how did the Cubs do there?
The Cubs did really well. With the last, we got went the last year I was there as an assistant coach. I think we went maybe like the quarterfinals and got beat by Pilot Point, like 27-21 back when Pilot Point was pretty good. So, it was a good opportunity. Had them 21-7. I think they came back and got us 28-21.
Wow.
Tough game.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny because people who don't really get it, they don't understand how everything has to go perfect to even make it to a state title game.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So let's talk from Clifton there. What was next?
Well, from Clifton, I actually then got the opportunity for my first head coaching job over in Rosebud Lot, Texas. Went over there and took the head job, and I kind of took a team that was supposedly not supposed to be a real good team. We were picked like fifth in the preseason ranking in Dave Campbell's Texas football, and ended up winning the district. We actually went on to beat two number 2 teams in the state, the morning classification, which was marked at that time. And then we beat Thorndale, who was like number 1 actually in the Class A below us. And so, it was a really good year. Went on to we won the district championship. And so it was a kind of a Cinderella year for us, and just a lot of fun. It's probably one of the most fun years of coaching that I ever had. My first head job.
Cool. And how long did that one last?
Well, I was at Rosebud Lot 1 year, and the head job at Clifton came back open, and they contacted me and asked me to come back to Clifton. And we went back to Clifton, Texas, and started kind of a nice little program there. So had a lot of fun there also.
Nice. And what did you, when you made the switch from coordinator to head coach, what was the biggest eye opener for you? It was like, wow, this job is a lot different than I expected.
Well, just the fact that you just got to kind of, the grind that you have to kind of put in. I can remember the day before my first day of two-a-days at Rosebud Lot, the offensive coordinator, who was Bill Bain, who took the role up for me and ended up winning the state championship there at Rosebud, came in and said, Coach, he said, if you don't relax on it, he said, I don't think you'll make the year. He said, you got to relax a little bit. Of course, about 4 or 5 years later, he called me when he was the head coach, and I had to give him the same advice. Right. Because he said, you're exactly right. Because he was talking about this. I said, hey, Bill, if you don't slow down, you're not going to make it, buddy. He said, I think you're right, Coach. I think you're right. So, like I said, we went back to Clifton there for 3 years, and that was a great deal there. We actually had some undefeated, like 10-0 seasons, and I think we went like 13-1 or something like that. And I gave up not one team. We played pretty good defense. I think we gave up 27 points in all the non-district schedule. You know what I'm saying? So it was a good deal. My reiterate that the reason I left Clifton, Texas, and I'd probably still be coaching in Clifton, Texas, believe it or not. May not have ever retired, but my daughter got killed in a car accident there the second year we were there in Clifton, and that made it very tough on us right there. And so the community rallied behind us, and I'll never be more thankful to a community than what Clifton was to me. I love that community. It was unbelievable. But the tragic death of her in the car accident just was kind of brutal on our family. It's just tough.
Yeah, no doubt. So take me from there. What was next? Well,
like I said, the second year we were back at Clifton as the head coach, she got killed in that car accident. And so at that point in time, we stayed that year and finished that season out. And I think we got beat by Boyd in the quarterfinals. They were the number one team in the state, a really close game. And yeah, we lost to Boyd, and I had kind of hoped, just by some crazy reason that we'd win the state championship and everything would be good. And, it just didn't turn out like that. And so we stayed there one more year and I think we were 11-1 that year. Lost to Hubbard at Baylor Stadium in a really, dynamic game. And then, just kind of had to make some decisions for our family, so I felt like we needed to kind of get our full family together. So ended up, taking the head job at Lampasas, Texas. Just like kind of sight unseen type thing. Just took it because we needed a fresh start. And so we were there and we were in Lampasas for 2 years and a tough time. Kind of they were kind of had a little bit of a lean cycle there, but some really nice gentlemen and coaching staff was great and everything. But, we just kind of struggled a little bit, to be honest with you, with some tough years there. I think we were 3-7 a couple of years. And so at that point, we kind of, the China Spring job came open and, that was more going to be like a place that I kind of felt like was going to be fit my family, kind of hopefully for a good duration.
So let me ask you this. You're putting back-to-back 3-7s or four win game teams, and a head coach job comes up. How do you make the pitch that, look, I can make China Spring a winner when you're coming right off of probably 2 of your worst years?
Well, like I said, I kind of think that people kind of maybe in Central Texas kind of knew kind of what had happened at Rosebud Lot. We kind of went in and, kind of won there, had a big offense and that kind of type thing, went back to Clifton, had good offenses, good defenses, put together nice programs and things like that. And then, like I said, just, at that time, Lampasas was just a little down as far as athletes and everything. And like I said, it was something I was looking more for a fit for my family than anything that attracted me to China Spring. Actually the guy that got the superintendent's job at China Spring I'd worked with him before at Clifton. So he kind of knew kind of what I was maybe capable of doing possibly or something like that. And he thought maybe I could get that done at China Spring.
Right. And talk to me about that because, if you look at your career at China Spring, there weren't many years under 500. I mean, there were some really good teams there. Talk to me about your career there.
Well, I think that, I was there, like 22 years as maybe the head coach there. And I think maybe 20 of those we were playoff in the playoffs and type situation. When the first year I went there, they had just gone into 3A, had never won a 3A football game. So, I think we went 3-7 that year. Then we went 6-5 the following year. Then there's a stretch there probably of about, 12 or 15 years that, we were winning, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 games a year, So I got it going pretty good. And like I said, due to a lot of great young men and a lot of great coaches and great administrators that, early on in my career there. And so that really got you started because, and to get a good program started, you got to have great administrators and it's got to be a team effort. I think that's what I always tell young coaches when they talk to me. I say, hey, you got to make sure you got a good principal, good superintendent in order to get things going. And that's very, very important. And that's what I had there at China Spring.
Nice. So let's talk about China Spring itself as a community. What was it about China Spring that allowed you to say, yeah, my family can grow up here. We can spend 20 plus years here?
Well, actually, to be honest with you, when I went to China Spring had been 0-10, 1-9, 0-10 the 3 years before I got there. And so I wasn't too excited. I'd been winning at least 4 games, those kind of things. And so it really, but I actually went and looked at the situation because the superintendent wanted me to come look at it. I went and looked at it and I thought, he goes, hey, do me a favor. Why don't you come back next week and go to lunch and kind of get in the cafeteria and kind of look at the kids and see what you think about the kids and kind of meet the kids. And that's kind of what really sold me because, man, when I went and spent some time in the lunchroom with the kids and saw what they were and type of kids they were, the quality of kids they were, I thought, you know what? This is the kind of, kids I want my kid to be around. You know what I'm saying? I think that's very, very important because my kids were very young at the time, and Sean was just finishing 7th grade and Brian was fixing to start school. And I said, this is a community that I'd like to raise my kids in. So that was more of the decision. And then I was going to make the football work around that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
At that phase of my life, my family was actually more important than my job. And, and it's just, I hate to say it like that, but, I've lost my daughter. It's just like, it was all about family. It was all about family, trying to make sure I was always making good decisions for my family.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that works in football because your football is an extended family.
Yes, sir. No doubt about it.
So let's talk about that, how you developed. I know it wasn't you, and you'll never take credit for all of it, but the winning culture there at China Spring, how did that develop?
Well, like I said, we came out, and the biggest thing we did was we thought, nobody could really, a couple things, that nobody could outwork us. And that was number one thing that we talked about in our program. Nobody can outwork us. That's something that we could control, how hard we worked. And then we talked about how strong we could be, and so, and then we felt like we could determine that ourselves too by getting in the weight room and really pushing and pushing and pushing. And then nobody could just be more committed than us, and we take those three factors and put them on the field and be disciplined with it. You know what I'm saying? And nobody could out-discipline us. You know what I'm saying? And so those things we put on the field, and that's kind of was our secret to success. And so we put those mottos all over our locker room walls all the time, talked about them and everything like that. And that's kind of how it all came about for the success, I think. So, but just a lot of great hard work and by the young men and coaching staff, and just grind. China Springs changed a lot in the last 3 or 4 years because of the different types of kids. Back then we had every kid that we had was a homegrown kid. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so now you start winning a little bit, you get some move-ins and some things like that. And so, it helps a little bit. Like I said, the UIL's changed a little bit as far as where they're dealing with some stuff. And so, like I said, it was good. But like I said, those kids really worked hard and really did a great job. And it meant a lot to be a, China Spring Cougar.
Excellent. And you've mentioned a couple people who played key roles in your career, but let's talk about your mentors and who stands out as, wow, what a huge impact in your life, and tell me what you learned.
Okay, well, first mentor was Ricky Ray, as I spoke earlier. He gave me the opportunity, and he taught me defense, and he taught me, just about character and enjoying coaching the game. And Ricky and I still talk, just all the time about a lot of stuff. And he was a great mentor there, and gave me the opportunity. And like I said, it kind of goes on. His legend goes on because of what he gave me the opportunity, and now my sons. And I guarantee you, my grandsons will be coaches because that's all they talk about and that's all they want to do. And so if they make wristbands and all kinds of stuff for recess and learn the fourth grade, and they take it very serious. Yeah. And the second mentor will be Ross Rogers. Ross was a great mentor of mine. Remember how I talked about Coach Gene Rogers, his dad? He came to clean and everything, and Ross kind of followed out of his footsteps, and it was his son, and went on to become a great legendary football coach. And Ross was one of my great mentors, and that's just kind of those are probably the top two high school mentors that I've kind of followed in the footsteps of. You know what I'm saying? So I love those guys. Those guys have been very, very good to me and always been there for me.
I love that. Yeah, and we've had Ross on the show. A great gentleman. So let's talk about the flip side of that. Some of the coaches that have developed under you, and I know to keep this culture, you need to keep your coaches, but I'm sure you had several that have gone out in the world and done things too.
That's funny that you say that, because just the other day I made a list of because I was just sitting around thinking about all my assistant coaches, and there was 23 different assistant coaches, 23 that went on to become, that I know of, that have gone on to become head coaches that have worked for me. And so I've been very blessed to have some great coaches. I was never afraid to hire a very talented coach, and like I said, it's just neat that 23 guys have gone on and followed on into it and everything like that. And so many of them kind of did the programs that we kind of did. And I probably should have mentioned a while ago, another guy that really helped develop my deal a little bit was Eddie Dunn. He was the guy at Clifton that gave me, and he was just really a big program guy. He was under Bob McQueen, and so he just brought the program, the emphasis to my situation and everything. And so I used a lot of his stuff. And so Coach Dunn, he was tough, but he was Bob McQueen made over, type deal. Everything, from quick cow to everything was about discipline and everything. You had to hang your stuff in your locker a certain way, on a certain hook and everything like that. And so, we did all those same things. So, Coach Dunn and actually Coach McQueen, I guess, would be two guys that really have helped my career also.
I love that. And, also we need to talk about the kids, because at the end of the day, it's all about these kids. And if you could pull out some of those special relationships you've had with some of your athletes over the years.
Well, I guess I can go, town by town, but, just some great athletes that I had when I was at Clifton was a young man that I just loved and admired to death, a guy named Brian Sanders. Went on to play football at Rice University. When I was at Clean, I had one of my favorites or best buddies was Anthony McDowell, who went on to end up playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Went to Rosebud a lot and had a guy named Brian Zipplin, who was just an outstanding football player, just a world-class football player. I'm just talking about some of the good ones, and then, at China Spring had Tyreek James, who went to play at Tulane, and just several guys all over, that just whatever. Of course, my two boys, one of my sons went to Baylor and played quarterback, and the other son went to Sam Houston and played quarterback. So very blessed by some unbelievable relationships with these guys. And then, like I said, a guy named Tyler Holcomb, who's the offensive coordinator at Conley now. So, these guys I just try to keep in contact with all the time, and just many, many relationships. I can't go through all of them. I'm sure I've left some key ones out, and like I said, but man, just so blessed by the young men that have played for me and played so hard. And I think that's kind of one of my goals that I always had, when I was coaching, was that I always wanted to want to try to get a kid to play or think that he was a little better than what he really was. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the whole key to, a kid, if he believes that he can play, then he can go against anybody and basically get it done. So I was just very blessed with some unbelievably fine young men to coach and to have the opportunity to be with. And I know those relationships are very special to me.
Definitely. And what about maybe a kid that didn't go on to athletic, fame or fortune, but just maybe became a good parent, became a good father, a good, employee? Talk about some of that.
Well, a lot of those guys, like I said, just some great guys still living in China Spring that I get a chance, Brandon Garrett, people like that just were Hunter Jarvis, just a lot of just great guys that just come to mind. And just great people, just do anything for you. If I called them today and told them I had a flat tire, they'd get in the car and drive 150 miles to fix my flat tire for me if I needed to. But hopefully I can still fix it by my own. But
right.
Just some really, really, really just so blessed. I use that word blessed, and I don't use it lightly because they blessed my life in ways that you just couldn't believe. So.
Excellent. And what about China Spring itself? What is there some positive there for China Spring still?
Oh yeah, I think that there's some good things still happening in China Spring, and I think they've got some good athletes. I think they've been able to like I said, they've had some nice kids move in. This could definitely help their program get over the last couple of years to really help them. And like I said, they've got some outstanding young men that are there in the program and just doing a fantastic job, working extremely hard, trying to keep there and trying to keep that up. This last year had a little bit of a struggle, and so hopefully they'll be able to pick that back up this year and get back on top. Right on.
All right, so what do you do now? I'm pretty sure you're not sitting around fishing all day.
No, sir. I try to really keep active, and basically I still work a little bit of part-time for a company here in Waco. I retired, and the guy asked me the week after I retired, he said, "Hey, I'd like you to go work for me." I said, "Hey, I just retired. I don't want to work." Anyway, but I'm still working because I enjoy him, and it gives me an opportunity to be out and do some things for people. But the main thing I do is I do have a little ranch, and I get to go out and do things I've never done before, had time to do before, get on the tractor and shred and do different things and feed deer and feed fish and take my grandkids. But that's the joy of my life. And then the biggest thing in my life right now is just being grandpa. And my grandpa name is Coach, and so they call me Coach, and I'm just blessed. Got 4 grandsons and a granddaughter, and we actually have an apartment in Houston that we go down and spend a lot of time down there, with the kids, so that we, both the boys down there with their whole families live down there, so we just have an apartment, so we go down there and visit them and my wife has the opportunity to keep the 2 youngest grandbabies during the week. So spend a lot of grandpa time and time at the ranch, and that's what life is all about. Life is good, and God has been extremely good to my family, extremely good to me, and so blessed because I'm able to take the time now to see how God blesses me in my daily walk. And so I'm just so blessed to be, where I'm at today.
That. I love that so much. Thank you, Coach Mark Bell. Gosh, it's been wonderful to hear some of your story and to help spread the positivity.
Yes, sir. Well, God bless you, and I hope you have a wonderful day, sir.
Lonestar Gridiron is looking for interns. Over the years, we have helped dozens of students get jobs in sports media. If you want to shortcut your path to a career in sports media, click on the internship link on LoneStarGridiron.com. Get ready to tee off with the legends of Texas sports. That's right, the TLSN Legends Golf Classic, a day of golf, glory, and giving back. It will be held at the Great Hills Country Club in Austin, Texas, Sunday, September 15th. Registration 11 a.m., tee time around noon, award ceremony at 6 p.m. Who's invited? Everyone. Fans, friends, alumni, business leaders, and golf lovers. If you have any interest in UT athletics and golf, this is the must-attend golf tournament. Whether you're swinging for birdies or just soaking up the stories, this is a can't-miss event. What can you expect? A round of golf with Texas sports legends. A premium course experience at Great Hills, awards, prizes, and exclusive photo ops. Food, drinks, unforgettable memories. The full details will be coming soon, as well as the lineup of legends who will be the captains for each team. To stay in the loop and to keep updated on player announcements, sponsor reveals, and ticket availability, go to TexasLSN.org. That's TexasLSN.org. The TLSN Legends Golf Classic.